and welcome back to my channel and welcome to my first ever deep dive where I make a series of videos on a subject that I find important or interesting or that needs to be discussed. This grouping of the deep dive is going to be Saudi Arabia. This episode is going to be women's rights, the guardianship system, and how they are so backwards that it's bad. Saudi Arabia for women's rights is just bad. I mean, we're going to talk about how young girls try to escape and how they do it. We're going to talk about imprisoned women's rights activists that are beaten and tortured. Yeah, let's just jump on into it. Okay, so I want to start with the most important part, the guardianship system in Saudi Arabia for women. We are treated as second-class citizens. We are treated like we are children, and we cannot make up our minds for ourselves. We cannot do anything without a male's approval. And this male can be anything from your husband to your father to your brother, and in some cases, your own son. Can you imagine your own son? Let's say your husband dies and your son is like 20-something. He now has a say in your bank account, your job, when you can leave the country, all of that stuff. Your child now has control of you. And that's not even the worst of it. Okay, it's the guardianship system, just to give you a general reference of how bad this is. You cannot leave the country without your guardian's permission. There's actually a computer program or an app that you can log into and say that your daughter or your wife or your mother or your sister or whatever, the person that you have guardianship over, whether they can leave the country or not. She cannot leave Saudi Arabia without that consent. Then, let's say you beat your wife, she cannot get hospital care. She cannot go to the police department. There's nothing she can do without your consent. So let's say you break her jaw and she needs to leave. She needs your consent, the person who just beat the living crap out of her, consent to go get medical treatment. If she wants to go file a report of an abuse, she has to get your consent before she can do that. Women who want to hold bank accounts need their guardianship. They need their guardian to sign off on it. They need their guardian to have a job, to get an education, to do anything. They are not allowed to do anything in this country without a man's permission first. That is absolutely disgusting and controlling and horrific and just so barbarically disgusting. And then we have MBS. For those of you who don't know, it's Mohammed bin Salman, who tries to tout around with his pretty smile and act like Saudi Arabia is moving forward and that they're allowing women to drive. They were literally the last country in the world that gave women the right to drive. The last country in the world. And right before that law went into effect, Mohammed bin Salman, known as MBS, or the Crown Prince, or King Ladouche, decided to go ahead and imprison a bunch of female activists. There's at least 4 or 5 that I know of that are still in prison, that are still being tortured and raped and beaten on basically a daily basis on his orders. Saudi Arabia is a country I'll never be able to go to now, by the way, because speaking out against them is an arrestable offense and I don't want to die, and we'll get into that later. But, yeah, imagine that. Imagine being arrested for just wanting rights and then beaten and raped and tortured. And when you go to ask for help, the Human Rights Council in Saudi Arabia, which is a joke within itself, is like, I'm not going to help you. Are you kidding me? We can't help you. This is the order from the freaking Crown Prince, who will, of course, deny it and say that they are working against the state or whatever. But they don't allow pretty much any sort of talkback, but we'll talk about that one in a different video. So these women are in prison, beaten, and raped every day. Then you have the whole situation where there are girls, that there's a whole network of girls constantly, and I do mean constantly, trying to escape Saudi Arabia. They will hack into this app, they will get Guardian to give them permission to travel, and then they will fly to places like India and Thailand, and they try to get to like Canada or Australia or the US where they can seek asylum, but they are often caught and dragged back by force. where they are often beaten, murdered, all sorts of other horrific things for just trying to get away from their family. I saw this video, and I will link it down below, of a girl who was in Thailand who was actually dragged back onto a plane to Saudi Arabia with her hands tied, her mouth duct taped, and her feet tied in a wheelchair as they drag her kicking and screaming back on a plane back to her country, when all she was trying to do was escape the people that are dragging her back on that plane. Can you imagine the human rights violations that is right there? The fact that women cannot leave their country, cannot escape the systematic abuse and oppression, and when they do try to escape, they are dragged back and beaten. That's what we're talking about here. That is absolutely 100% what we are talking about with the guardianship system. And we do business with this country, and we have been doing business with this country since the 1940s. We absolutely should stop selling them weapons. We should stop buying their oil. We should stop supporting their country until they come out of the freaking 18th barbaric. It's not even the 18th century. It's bad. It's really, really bad. And then they are allowing women in politics, but on the council that advises the king. I will get into more about that council later, but I just want to talk about the women that are on this council. There's 32 of them. They are required to sit separately behind a screen away from the men and to pray in a separate mosque section because men and women cannot mingle. The McDonald's there has a separate section for single men because they don't want them mingling with the women. Up until recently, you could be arrested by the religious police. That they have kind of relaxed a little bit on, but it's still really, really, really horrifically bad. Just if you're a woman in Saudi Arabia, your life is just garbage. And we need to do better as a country. We're aware of what we're aware of what Saudi Arabia does, and yet we do nothing about it. We sit back and we do nothing. Stop buying their oil. Stop selling their weapons. Stop. Just stop. This country, our country needs to do better. Canada doesn't really do business with them, and they're doing fine. They're so mad at Canada, they pulled their freaking diplomats. When this girl escaped from Canada, and I don't want to say her name. I know her name, but I don't want to say her name because I don't want to draw attention. I'll link her thing down below if you want to watch it, but I don't want to draw that much attention to her because reasons. But I'll link her stuff down below. But when she escaped, she actually did the most amazing, brave thing I've ever seen. She spent a whole night in a hotel filming her experience, being like, I don't want to go back. I will get beaten. I will get killed. I need your help. And it was able to be mobilized on Twitter. It was able to get her. She wanted to go to Australia, but the UN was able to get her sanctuary in Canada. Saudi Arabia got so mad, they actually pulled diplomats out and all sorts of other things. And Canada has been on Saudi Arabia's crap list ever since. Personally, I say good on Canada. Way to go, Canada. You're doing what we should be doing. We should stop supporting this. We should stop having our first trip of the President of the United States should not have been Saudi Arabia. I mean, just their record on women's rights is awful. So that will be that one. I will see you guys later when I do the next one. Bye.